Weeds can be one of the most frustrating challenges in a raised bed garden. They sneak in between your plants, steal nutrients, and take over before you even realize what's happening. If left unchecked, they can choke out your vegetables and flowers, making it harder for your garden to thrive. Over the years I've experimented with various methods, both organic and inorganic, to keep my raised beds weed-free without resorting to harsh chemicals. If you find this guide helpful, don't forget to subscribe to Hydrohaven and share this with fellow gardeners. The best way to deal with weeds is to stop them before they even start. Prevention saves time, effort, and frustration in the long run. Weeds need 3 things to grow: light, water, and space. If you can cut off any of these factors, you're already winning half the battle. One of the most effective preventive measures is using high-quality soil. When filling my raised beds, I always make sure to use fresh, weed-free compost and topsoil. If you bring in garden soil from another location, you might be unknowingly introducing weed seeds. I also recommend avoiding unfinished compost, as it may contain seeds that haven't broken down yet. For those who prefer an all-natural approach, there are plenty of organic ways to keep weeds at bay. One of my go-to methods is using mulch. Mulch does wonders by blocking light, preventing weed seeds from germinating. I like to use organic mulches such as straw, shredded leaves, or even sawdust. Sawdust works particularly well because it creates a fine barrier that suppresses weeds while breaking down slowly, adding nutrients to the soil over time. Another effective organic method is using ground covers. Low-growing plants like clover, creeping thyme, or even living mulch such as sweet alyssum can act as a natural barrier against weeds. These plants spread out and create a dense cover that blocks weeds from taking hold. Plus, many of these ground covers improve soil quality by fixing nitrogen and attracting beneficial insects. Hand weeding is, of course, a classic approach. It's important to pull weeds when they're young before they have a chance to set seed. I always try to weed right after a rain when the soil is soft. It makes the job so much easier. One trick I've learned is to cut weeds off at the soil line rather than pulling them out entirely, especially for deep-rooted weeds. This prevents soil disturbance, which can bring buried weed seeds to the surface. Another great organic trick is using vinegar or boiling water. A strong spray of vinegar on a hot sunny day can dry out young weeds quickly. Boiling water works just as well, especially for weeds growing along the edges of raised beds where you don't want to disturb the soil. If you're looking for low-maintenance solutions, inorganic methods might be a better fit. One of the simplest and most effective approaches is using landscape fabric. I sometimes lay a sheet of landscape fabric at the bottom of my raised beds before adding soil. This helps block out weeds from below while still allowing water to drain. Another great way to use landscape fabric is as a top barrier, cutting holes only where your plants need to grow. This method is especially useful for crops like tomatoes and peppers that don't require frequent replanting. Plastic mulch is another option. While it's not as eco-friendly as organic mulches, it can be incredibly effective at preventing weeds. Black plastic works best because it blocks sunlight completely. The downside is that it can heat up the soil too much in hot climates, so I tend to use it during cooler months or in combination with a light layer of straw on top to regulate temperature. Another simple but often overlooked method is edging. By installing a solid border around your raised beds, you can keep creeping weeds from invading. I like using bricks, stones, or even metal edging to create a physical barrier that prevents grass and weeds from spreading into the bed. Once you've got your weeds under control, the key is to maintain a system that keeps them from coming back. Regular maintenance is crucial, and a little effort each week can save a ton of work later on. I always do a quick weed check when watering or harvesting. It only takes a minute to pull a stray weed before it becomes a problem. Crop rotation is another strategy I use to keep weeds in check. Rotating plant families each season helps disrupt the growth patterns of weeds and pests. Companion planting also helps. For example, planting densely packed vegetables like lettuce and radishes can shade out weeds before they even start. A final but important tip is to avoid over-tilling. While it might seem like turning the soil frequently would help with weed control, it often has the opposite effect. Tilling brings buried weed seeds to the surface, where they get the light and warmth they need to sprout. I prefer using a no-till approach, where I layer compost and mulch over the soil instead of turning it over. Dealing with weeds in raised beds doesn't have to be a constant struggle. By combining preventive strategies with both organic and inorganic weed control methods, you can keep your garden looking neat and productive without resorting to excessive labor or chemicals. Whether you prefer natural mulches, living ground covers, or weed barriers like fabric and plastic, there's a solution that fits your gardening style. If you found this guide useful, don't forget to subscribe to Hydrohaven and share it with your gardening friends. Keeping a weed-free raised bed is possible with the right techniques, and I'd love to hear what works best for you in the comments. Let's keep our gardens thriving, one weed-free bed at a time.